add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often, if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
This is hiring.
Hiring on all cylinders.
Hello out there, my sweet, beautiful, darling, panda bear cutie recruiters. It's me, Entelo Rob, here at the helm of your favorite recruiting podcast once more for another classic installment of Hiring on All Cylinders. With me in the makeshift studio, I have our own director of recruitment. You know her well, Britt Ryan. Britt, how are we?
I am excellent, Rob. How
Excellent.
are you?
What a good superlative. I'm pretty good too. I'm glad to be back doing this. I don't know. We've gotten in here a few more times in the last, there was a long period of
That's right. I know. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Glad to have you back in. How's the old Entelo talent team doing?
We are awesome.
Yeah, rocking and rolling.
Awesome. We're growing. We're adding another recruiter to the team. We'll have our first dedicated tech recruiter starting in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
So
I'll let her get settled in before I shove a microphone in her face.
That's right. And we're hiring like crazy. We've already had 4 engineers start this year, and we've got another 2 confirmed to be joining us in about a week. So we are jamming.
How about that?
Yeah.
So
how
then
about that?
You're full. I guess I'm hoping you have this fleshed out 2017 talent plan, or making up as you go along. I don't know what your style is, but what are sort of the milestones you want to hit? What are some of the big rocks you're hoping to move this year on the talent side?
Yeah. So, in addition to hiring, I think our plan is we'll probably end at somewhere between 170 and 180 in terms of company headcount. So that's another really significant chunk of growth for us, probably 70 to 80%. So that's really exciting from where we are right now. So as a recruiting team, we're doing all sorts of things. We're rebranding our website. We're really thinking about our best places to work achievements and how we're using those to market the organization and developing content around those in terms of video and blog posts. And we're really focusing on building out our talent communities. So we've never used the tagging function in our ATS before, and now we're really doing that so that we can follow up with candidates who maybe weren't right for a certain position at a certain time, but people we really want to stay in touch with. So we're doing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, that's a good example of I guess maybe it's a default one, but it seems like you can do custom tags within your most ATSs, right?
You can.
So what would be some examples of other custom tags you might want to put on candidates?
Yeah, my favorite custom tag right now is called ramen. So we have a ramen tag for
Right.
engineering candidates. So about once a month, we host a ramen lunch. Ramen is a very popular delicacy amongst engineers, along with boba tea.
Yep.
And so we like to bring engineers in more as a, hey, come on in, get to know Entelo, get to know who we are, see a demo. Some people have been friends of Entelo for a while. Some are people that we may have met in some other way, shape, or form. And it's really about us continuing to expand our network as opposed to we have a job, we need a candidate. Are you the candidate? Do you want a job? Can we hire you? And I love our ramen lunches outside of the fact that it's delicious. It's just a really fun way to meet new people and interact and engage in a way that's not, so sort of rec and headcount focused.
Exactly. Okay. So yeah, a custom tag that shows you, okay, these people engaged with us in some way that was beside the typical just hiring cycle of source to close thing.
Exactly. Another favorite one too, and Liz on our team gets all the credit for doing the research on this, but we've now created tags that are, follow up Q2 17, follow up Q3. So we can, if we talk to somebody and they say, hey, I just took another job, then we can tag them to follow up in a year from now. Or we can tag somebody who says, hey, I have a bonus that's getting paid out in March, so let's talk then. So we have date-specific tags so that we can run that list once a month, once a quarter, and very quickly go through the list and say, these are the people who told us to follow up with them, so now would be a good time to reach out and remind them of Entelo and that we'd love to reconnect with them and go for coffee or
Right.
Something.
Yeah, and that follow-up is something that often happens at just like an individual level with like you might use some kind of inbox tool for that. But in the ATS, now you can kind of get at a high level, okay, here's like this not quite pipeline of candidates that are like, in communication with us that we can think about having coming through at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. Well, I'm glad you brought up ramen lunches and Friends of Entelo. Seamless segue into today's guest. She is one of our very own Entelopes here. She is a director of engineering, Colleen Noonan. Colleen, so glad you came in to do this with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So you have done just a tremendous job, not just fashioning, but also articulating the engineering brand here. You've fired up an engineering-specific blog, as well as you've contributed on our own blog. And I want to get to that, but let's just get to know you a little bit. You've definitely done a ton of recruiting so far, right?
Yeah, definitely, especially while here at Entelo, but I've helped grow some teams at my past employers as well.
Cool. So you're doing what stage is that? Are you like sourcing? Are you obviously interviewing? Like how much or how little of it are you involved in?
Pretty intensely involved. Almost every day I have something going on, and I have a weekly goal of sourcing blind outreach to 50 plus candidates a week. And then I also do things like try and come up with ideas to reach out on a higher level, like doing Women Who Code or other outreach to diverse populations to try and bring some more diversity into Entelo.
That's amazing. I can actually hear our listeners groan with jealousy when you say you have this goal of 50 blind outreaches a week. I'm sure many wish that their hiring managers were that plugged in. Was this your idea? Was this sort of like the talent team? Like, how did we get to that point?
I think I came up with the number because I knew I could reach that one pretty realistically. But we have a lot of work to do in Entelo and our products and in our engineering team, and we just need more capacity. So Britt has helped, and her team for helping us figure out how many people do we need to reach out to start that pipeline to eventually get to the headcount we need.
You also mentioned that you arrange these events with the Women Who Code. Can you speak a little bit about that? I have a million questions, but I'd rather you kind of explain that first before I follow up.
Absolutely. I actually have spoken with them before in an engineering capacity, and also just reaching out to meetups as well. But until I worked at Entelo, I've never worked with an engineering team that really stressed diversity so much. And, as a technical person, it really wasn't a big... I mean, I am a woman in tech, but it really has never been...
You're a woman who codes.
I am a woman who codes. But, at the teams I've worked in before, nobody really thought, this is really important. We need to spend time. And when I started at Entelo, I kept hearing that from a number of people, this is really important to us. And, I listened. So I really think every 3 weeks I meet up with people from engineering, women and men. If it's important, it is important to certain men on the team too that we have voices heard from all over our population. Women, people of color, and so those engineers and the talent team get together and we really brainstorm on what things can we do. And before even Britt was a part of this, Margaret, who was doing recruiting coordinating, she helped out, and Jill as well, who's been in operations, so to help brainstorm on ways to reach out, meetups to go to, things that we could be sending out our engineers to, as well as things we could do to host and support those groups.
So that's kind of a twofer, right? It's obviously we have these important goals about diversity, but you're kind of building this community and having people in the same, I guess, tone and theme as the ramen lunch, where it's like just come and get to know us and develop a little bit, especially with the Women Who Code. So you're kind of, is that part of the engineering brand strategy, just like building a community? Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll say when I was interviewing here, I guess that was probably 9-10 months ago, I just was really impressed There wasn't the ramen lunch that there is now, but just the way the engineering interviews were structured, it was the first one is basically only an hour long, plus a little bit of a demo of our products. But, just it's very low pressure when you only have to spend an hour. You could come after work, you could come on your lunch hour, and then you are almost working at a casual pace instead of like needing to take a day off work or really stressing out. Am I meeting the VP? Am I what kind of quiz questions will the engineers give me? There's a lot of pressure. So I like how you get this almost sample set of what the team is like with a 1 hour interview, and then you have like a mature conversation about the product and the engineering team and what the culture's like. It's very low pressure.
I love that, because I think a common method of assessing engineers is like an all-day interview.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, the standard, but that's not how people work, right? Like if you were going to be an engineer at whatever company, you're going to meet with people throughout the day, you'll meet with them, but someone's not breathing down your neck for 9 hours, like judging everything you say and judging every answer you give. Like,
yeah.
So just this initial thing of, all right, like let's have a side-by-side sort of paired partner coding thing is, it's not just lower pressure. I think it's more in line with how engineering actually gets done.
Absolutely. And you make an important point there about the pairing, because when we talk about the candidate afterward in a debrief, we really talk about how do they communicate in that small sample set too, because communication is as important a skill as their technical capability. And I like that we have that opportunity to assess that, whereas, and myself included, when I've gone through engineering interviews and they talk about pairing, it's often people watching you do whatever the technical exercise is.
Right.
And in our case, it's very much about communication, talking about how would you break down a problem and share it between the two people.
And like, do they use the partner as a resource?
That's the idea.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to do it together, right?
Yep.
As opposed to doing like coding in front of someone in a lab coat, like furiously scribbling on a clipboard, which is like what a lot of assessment seems to be like.
Yeah. And so in that way, we try to make it a friendly atmosphere. And the ramen lunches and boba teas and the reaching out via Women Who Code or other events like that are just other ways to really make, Entelo feel friendly to new people. Like, we're a resource. We're here, during Women Who Code, a couple of the team members stuck around and helped people on their personal projects, their homework, various things.
That's
and
cool.
It was a great way to just have those conversations, get to see what people are into and see what their concerns are when they're looking for a job.
I love it.
Yeah,
It's
it often
fantastic.
seems that some of the people going to meetups are actually going for the reason of trying to build their own community or reserve time to work on their personal projects. Because Women Who Code especially is kind of a beginner's group of people who are coming from various different industries or just out of school and maybe new to the area. So it's a great way for them to learn who the companies are and get to meet some people.
Yeah, with that, it's sort of like put your money where your mouth is kind of thing, because you can say, yes, diversity is important to us. We're going to go out there and hire a female engineer or whatever the diversity means to your organization. There's a million different definitions. But if your office is not a place where a woman engineer would want to work, like, what are you doing? So you have this event which is like, okay, we are like welcoming and inclusive to this kind of community. So it just like makes sense. Like, if you were a female engineer coming to this, like, okay, this is not just a company that's like looking at their numbers like, oh, well, we should hire diverse engineers because we're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's supposed like, no, it's actually an important initiative here.
Yeah, and really showing people the value there, that when you make software that is made by people who come from all different backgrounds, the idea and the reality is that your products will appeal to a wider range of people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think it's interesting to say too. So when you talk about walking the walk, that 20% of our engineers right now are female in the organization. And we have created an environment where people want to be here. And it's interesting when you look at the diversity stats, because we know that the way that we're going to be most successful in continuing to have a diverse organization is to be looking to organizations like Women Who Code and looking at how we can bring in some of the more junior engineering talent. And we have a lot of passion around mentorship here too. So we actually strive to bring in people that we can develop and see that as a great avenue for us to increase our diversity numbers. So
then as a recruiter, when you're sourcing candidates or you're evaluating candidates, you can identify like this is someone who can develop. What's the difference between someone who you hope grows in the organization and maybe shows that potential versus just a junior candidate?
I think with all junior candidates, we look at them as people that we'd want as long-term hires and that we would want to see them develop and grow and be successful going from what we call a software engineer to a senior to a lead. We want to put that career map in place for every single person who walks through the door, sort of regardless of ethnicity or sexual orientation or any of those things. But people learn in different ways and people learn sort of at different speeds. And so those are things that we'll be assessing with people around what types of challenges are we giving them and how quickly are they adapting, how quickly are they able to work independently. So I think our expectation when we bring somebody in with less experience is that we want to make sure that they have the support that they need and the guidance that they need. And as quickly as they ramp, we'll allow them to be more and more independent in the work that they do, but they should never feel like there's an expectation of like 3 months you should be totally independent because the person sitting next to you was. It's going to be different for everyone.
So then that assessment for potential for growth, is that happening post-hire?
It does, yeah. So it's both. I think we assess people in the interview process, but then we also assess for quality of hire. And it's a metric that we've talked about, but this is the first year that we're really implementing it. And we're also looking at some tools like a reflective or a culture amp where we can be doing more around performance management so that we can not only check in sort of in a conversation with a hiring manager to say, hey, how is, Susie recruiter doing in her new job? But it's also, let's really look at what are the things that you set up in a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and are they achieving that? And do we feel like the tools that we're using in interviewing and the way that we're going about interviewing is successful for us in terms of the quality of the candidates that we're hiring? So not just, when we talk about culture ad, like, oh, this person would be great because they play the guitar when they're not at work.
Right.
But it's also, we did a good job of assessing them on the front end, and they really did bring the skill set that we were looking for from a technical perspective in addition to a culture ad perspective.
Would you agree, Colleen?
I would totally agree, and I'm a big fan of hiring junior or less experienced engineers because I find that the investment usually pays off. Often it results in employees or team members that are much more loyal than perhaps a senior engineer who could get another job around the corner. Yeah, your company and your team is making an investment in them, and often those more inexperienced members are really grateful and are really excited to get the chance to work on cool projects and get paid for it too. A lot of people coming from boot camp or maybe doing this on the weekends are thrilled that they get the chance to work with the team and do cool stuff.
So then the pre-hire assessment of like this person's potential for growth, I keep harping on this because it seems like that comment or that feedback, I guess, this person shows a lot of potential for growth is like just recruiter speak for this person is inexperienced.
Yeah, and I think so we had an engineering offsite last week and we talked a lot about interview training and we talked a lot about, whether you call it competency-based interviewing or behavioral interviewing. And I think it's been very interesting for me at Entelo to go back to one of the things that you and Colleen were talking about by bringing people in to do demos and bringing them in for pair programming. I think that our process is slower, and I was really worried in the Bay Area. Like people are bringing people in all day long, and they're walking out with offers, exploding offers, and join today. And we do not take the used car salesman approach, but really nurture candidates. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen with the people that join, because I survey all of them and I'm like, how do you feel about our process? How do you feel about our timeline? And people love it. They love the pair programming. They love coming for lunch. They love the way that it's broken up. So you do run the risk that you are going to lose certain candidates because you are taking a little bit longer, but I think the quality of the hire that we get back to really is somebody that we see being really good. And then you tie that into where I started with the competency-based interviewing, especially with people who don't have as much practical experience, where they don't have a lot of open source code that you can check out, or they're just coming out of a boot camp, that you can ask them a lot of situational questions. And I think the behaviors that people exhibit in their life outside of work are the behaviors that they're going to bring to work.
Sure, yeah.
So I may not be able to probe a more junior candidate on their professional experience and ask them to tell me about a time when they really struggled through a project, or about a time when they failed at something and how they overcame it. But they could have failed in a class at university or in high school, and how did that feel and why did that happen? And so I think that's also part of the process of, if you don't have tangible work related things that you can ask someone, you can still learn a lot about someone and what gets them out of bed in the morning and what motivates them just based on their life experiences.
Definitely. And can I just say that I think the exploding offer is bullshit?
Yes.
If it's such a manufactured, arbitrary deadline, and you're using it as like a negotiation tactic to be like, we want to close this candidate right away, and we want them to think that there's like this perceived like lack of availability, or like, and here's the thing, like, don't you want to wait for the right candidate? I had a friend that was like, oh, they told me that I need to sign by Friday, and I was like, don't sign. I was like, either call their bluff and don't sign, and then see like, then try and keep getting the job later, or just tell them, hey, like, if you're not willing to wait a weekend for me, then I'm not the right person for you, because you don't want me. You just want someone. Yeah. Right? If an exploding offer is not, we want you to work here, it's we want someone to work here. I don't care who it is as long as they sign. Yeah. I guess, and the only example it would be okay is like if you have someone else that you're deep in process with, and like you want to give them an offer and you don't want them to like wait around forever. And so like in that case maybe, but I feel like that's rare.
Yeah.
Rare sort of
and I
scenario.
think in that case, honesty really is the best policy. If we have someone and it's sort of a, hey, we think that you're really fabulous, but if this really, if the timing's not right for you or there's something else, like I always want to understand those things. So I think it's also having the conversations early and often throughout the process to understand where they're at. But we just had a candidate in yesterday, and he is so shell-shocked from the last company culture that he's exited. And one of the big things he said to me is, I don't want an exploding offer. I said, we don't do exploding offers here. Because at the end of the day, I think that it speaks to your company's culture. And if they're giving you an exploding offer, you can probably expect there are other fire drills that are going to be coming your way once you enter the company.
You're going to have other explosions to
exactly,
deal with.
Right? Exactly. So that's, to me, also just an indicator. And for Entelo, we want people who are going to be, they want us as much as we want them. Mm-hmm. So to us, we're really sort of brokering a marriage as opposed to a blind date that may or may not go well.
Right. So, yeah. And it makes sense to set a time frame too with the candidates. Like, hey, we want to give you this offer, and like, okay, I need some time to think. Yeah, of course. When do you think you'll know by? Are you evaluating other offers? Like, what's your time frame? Like setting, and that's not an exploding offer though. That's just like setting expectations and saying when works for you, which I think is the best way to go about it. And it
does make sense. I mean, our offer letters do have a date where if you get an offer letter on Thursday, we might say, hey, we'd like to hear from you by Tuesday. So we can go back and edit the offer letter, but we do parameters in around, we don't want you to just be carrying this thing around for 3 months, and it's sort of like an open-ended contract to join when you feel like it. But, if somebody came back on a Tuesday and said, hey, I really need until Friday, take the time that you need, and we're here. So
we try to create a relationship with the candidates. So if, we were excited about someone and they said they needed more time, we almost want to start off as friends. So we'll definitely if you would do that for a friend, you would do it for this person.
Right. And then looking forward, if this person is going to be your colleague and you're going to work with them for the foreseeable future, a few years maybe, like, wouldn't you want to give them that leeway as a coworker and as a member of your team, right? Like, treat them that way as a candidate too.
Right. Exactly.
In the blog post you wrote for us, which was wonderful, by the way, you're a great writer, you said that engineers are in such high demand, you have to offer them such a great workplace experience because just an offer and a paycheck is probably not going to be enough. If you're an engineer, you would probably, if you have a lot of offers, you would want to work on something that you care about, like a cool company that's like maybe you align with the mission. A lot of recruiters work at companies that it's a cool product, it's a very successful business, great job, but say it's like advertising tech, right? No one's mission is to help figure out how to make people click on more things. So like in that case, if you don't have a mission-driven company, but it's still like, what do you sell the engineering on?
So did you look at my resume? Because I came from advertising tech.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I felt that way the entire time. You, as any candidate would, you weigh the pros and cons. For me, advertising has a lot of volume, and I, as an engineer, wanted to get into the big data thing and learn the skills and technologies around that. When I was pursuing a new workplace, I was thinking I did want to do something that I aligned with. And I also saw the usefulness of, and when it came to more tools for hiring, I know that the tools out there, at least that I had at that time, needed some work, or there needed to be more that I didn't know about. So I was like, wow, Entelo, this is a great idea because hiring is difficult.
Yeah.
So I definitely saw the value there. And I'm speaking for myself here as a hiring manager. So how do you get engineers behind it? And honestly, I think we could potentially do a better job, but it was that initial meeting with Cole where I learned that even though it sounds like HR software is not the sexiest thing for a Silicon Valley engineer, when you really break it down into what's happening behind the scenes in terms of the technology, it is pretty interesting. There's some cool stuff going on there with the data science, like when you're perhaps using our search product, that if you put in tech lead, it's also software engineer, it's also web developer, it's also programmer. Like there's a lot of this back-end science that's happening that is pretty interesting to technical candidates, and really talking about those things. That's when when we have an on-site candidate, I usually meet them in the morning, and that's what I talk about is I explain our back-end architecture, and I usually talk about the cool stuff we're working on, because that is going to be top of mind for any engineer. And if you really hook them, so it is kind of a sales pitch. If you hook them on, whatever their thing is. For me, I always talk about things from a data side, but I am always trying to make sure I cover some of the front end sexy stuff that's happening. Because with web technologies, things are changing fast, and most candidates you want to hire want to work on cool stuff, either the tech, or they can get behind the mission, or things like that. And those are the things that are somewhat quantifiable, but there's also the things that are not. And I think Entelo does a good job through our interview process of highlighting those. Some of those are, like I said, for our tech screen, that initial 1 hour, we really work in sort of a team environment. And I don't know if all candidates get this experience, but when I did it, I realized that there's a lot of communication here. There's a lot of like cool people that you would want to talk to. And they're also very open. Like I've worked at a lot of places where there's some guru who maybe rewrites all the code over the weekend or pushes things directly to production. There's a lot of ego in software engineering, and so working with a team that is really open and communicative, and is willing to hear ideas, and you can bounce ideas off of, that is really valuable. So highlighting that as through our interview process is difficult, but we do manage to do that. And another thing as a manager, and I try to bring this out in our interview process as well, but I want to make sure that the candidate or the team member is heard. Like what are their key strengths? What do they want to work on? What are they looking for in the next position? Because really listening to those and making sure that throughout the interview process, the hiring process, that you really tap into those things. Like maybe they didn't like working in advertising tech because they don't like getting sold ads all the time. Like, okay, well, really digging a bit deeper to see like what kind of things do they want to work on, and seeing if you can really make a good fit.
Right at the beginning of your answer, and I have a million follow-up questions, but I want to ask this one first. You said, so when you were hiring at your last role, when you were deciding, on this one, one thing that jogged your imagination was like, I know what hiring tools are like and what hiring software is out there. So it sounds like you were dissatisfied with them.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really have a mature ATS. I think we got one towards the end, but it was hard to find candidates that you've found really interesting but were not available 3 months ago, like resurfacing candidates and, highlighting what things they're looking for, and really capturing the notes and being able to surface them in a way that was accessible. Yeah, I found things like, it basically felt like Excel sheets. It just wasn't really working. But mostly we would count on, having a job board, a careers kind of page, and getting resumes submitted. And we weren't as strategic in like how to reach out and find people. No, I like I said, I did speak with Women Who Code. We hosted Women Who Code, and I gave a talk at that employer as well. And that was the beginning of what I found to be like highlighting the importance of the engineering brand. I really like talking to people and answering their questions and helping. And in fact, I guess before that too, I did some mentoring with Pi Ladies, a Python-focused women in engineering group. So I'm always looking for opportunities to help people who are looking for new opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And it strikes me that recruiters can play their part by finding the people in their organizations who are like you, who they can like say, hey, you need to let's go out in the community, and like if recruiting is important to you, let's get involved, and let's not just focus on the source part. Like let's actually participate in the engineering community and wherever we are.
Yeah. Maybe I would say that perhaps the limitation at my last employer was because our recruiter was a contract recruiter, so we mostly had to handle things as best we knew as engineers, which wasn't really that, we didn't know that much. So we relied on her.
That's the first time I've ever heard an engineer say that.
Yeah, we don't know how to hire.
Yeah.
Well, now I do. I do.
These guys,
Yeah, Entelo
engineering at Entelo knows how to hire. They are. I always say you guys are by far and away the best engineers I've ever worked with when it comes to hiring. It's they're awesome.
Yep, we're learning with good people. But yeah, so when you have like a contract recruiter, it's just a little bit different to really be strategic in that way and really plan out your pipeline.
Gotcha. So you didn't have like an internal
team
there?
No, unfortunately, yeah. It's just a scrappy engineering startup, and they're like, that's not important. Turns out it's really important.
Yeah, we don't need a recruiter. We don't have enough people for that yet.
Yeah.
What? Where are they going to come from? I've heard that multiple times. It's like, well, hold on, that's backwards. Cool. Well, this has been a blast as we creep up on optimal podcast length.
You got to mention the engineering blog.
Oh yeah, plug.
Yeah, come on.
Sorry, I'm a bad marketer.
That's all right. I do that to my own team too. I'm always looking for the engineers to write content, but I just needed to plug it in there.
Yeah. What's the? It's the Medium, right?
It's a Medium blog, but you wouldn't know it really unless you dug into it. We have it hosted under engineering.entelo.com.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then it's a great way to look at examples of how you can sort of show off your engineering brand and like look at the live events you've thrown and like the team offsites you do and all that kind of thing. And it's just a great way to show prospective talent, like this is who we're about. We're not just saying it in an interview.
Yeah, we have a few blog posts about some of our offsites, and then some of the meetups we've hosted, in open source projects we've contributed to. And I think there's perhaps a ramen review there in the beginning too when I was making it.
That's awesome.
It's such a ramen culture here. I wanted to encourage the team to post their favorite restaurant reviews.
Yeah, of course, naturally. I love it. Engineering.entelo.com. Get your ramen reviews.
You need to get a boba review going.
Yeah, there needs to be a boba. Yeah, that's next. Colleen, this has been an absolute blast. You're a natural. Thank you so much for coming in here and chatting. You can come back in anytime you like.
I'll take you up on that.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Britt, any last parting wisdom? We can't just end the show. It's like a careful needle you have to thread. Which I will now put in your capable hands.
Yeah, I know. Like, no pressure. Don't put me on the spot or anything.
Sorry.
Well, one thing that I know is that one of the things that we do when we sign off candidates is that we also share the blog with them. So we're always looking at content that we can share with them. So we'll be sure to be sharing the podcast with our engineering candidates as well.
Good idea.
Oh yeah, this is a good one to share with them.
Yeah. So
awesome.
That's my wisdom for today.
I love it.
If you're looking to hire engineers, share the Entelo podcast and the Entelo blog.
Exactly.
With your candidates, and then direct them back to us.
Yeah.
We'll hire them.
It's a great strategy. It's crafty.
All right, Britt, thank you so much for joining me again. You're a gem.
you.
Colleen, loved having you.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there in podcast land, you've been wonderful, amazing, talented, beautiful recruiters. I've been Rob Stevenson. Have a spectacular week and happy hunting.